Hi. The topic, as it was advertised, is going to be the halakhic implications of the COVID vaccine. Is it asur? Is it allowed? Is it a mitzvah? Is it an obligation? I want to mention from the onset a few things. First of all, this class is taken primarily from the shiur of Rav Asher Weiss and the halakhic ruling of Hakam Ishaq Yosef. They both say very similar things. For those who are not familiar with Rav Asher Weiss, he is one of the preeminent halakhic authorities in Israel and in the world. He rules on a wide range of topics, but he has a special interest in medical halakha. He is the halakhic authority for the Shaarei Tzedek hospital in Yerushalayim, and many of his teshubot have to do with medicine. I don't actually have to look at my face the entire time. How is that going to work? Here we go.
You can switch to gallery view.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Top left.
Top left.
If I'm not mistaken.
Remove spotlight now. Participants react. So I see some galleries, but
Top right, it says view when you hover over the people. On the top
there
right.
you go. Okay. Okay, good. I see you and not me. Better. Okay. So now my classes, I like to actually encourage questions. I like it to be interactive. It's very hard for me to listen to myself for the next 45 minutes. I'm sure it's even more difficult for you. And so I appreciate that everyone's muted, but you can unmute yourself to ask questions at any time. I just ask that they remain to be relevant questions. So it should be relevant to the halakha as it pertains to the COVID vaccine. Questions specifically about COVID or about the vaccine, I could answer at the end, but let's not try to interrupt the class for those kind of questions. I also ask that if anyone has very strong feelings about vaccines in general, either pro or con, this is not the forum for it. It's not going to be a debate. We're going to discuss halakha, whereas as it pertains to specifically the COVID vaccine. Okay. Ready? Let's start. So the first issue that we need to deal with as just basics is there an obligation to do something active in order to actively prevent risk, actively prevent danger? So we know that there's an obligation to avoid danger. Rambam understands that is a mitzvah from the Torah, that one must avoid dangerous things in order to keep himself safe. Question is, am I only obligated to avoid danger, or do we need to actively prevent danger as well? So, does anyone know any examples of something that we actually have to do in order to prevent danger actively? I'll give you a hint. It's the very, very last siman in Shulchan Aruch. You won't find it in the Tur. It's where Bet Yosef, where Maran added on to the Tur. And in fact, as I'm sure you're all thinking right now, but I'll just say it out loud for all of us, is achod ma'akeh, putting a fence around one's roof in order so that no one falls. So there is a mitzvah to actively put a fence around the roof, and so that no one gets harmed. So we see that there's an obligation to actively prevent harm and danger. And here in this Sima Shulchan Aruch, after talking about ma'akeh, he says, anything, any obstacle or something else that could be dangerous, that could cause harm to people, mitzvah asel hasiro. You have mitzvah from the Torah to remove this dangerous thing, and also to avoid it. So we have to prevent it and avoid it. And you have to be very careful with this to make sure there's no danger around. Because you have a pasuk from Torah telling us that we have to guard our life and guard our health. And if he did not remove something that's dangerous, then he is oved on the mitzvah aseh from the Torah and the mitzvah lo ta'aseh of lo tasin damim bebetecha. So Shulchan Aruch is posek that a person must actively prevent danger that could possibly befall him or others. So that's simple. What about if, in order to prevent danger, one must put himself at some risk, which means that I have an obligation to save you, to save your life. Does that mean that I have to put myself at some risk in order to save your life, or myself? So this is actually a broad topic. It can be a class in and of itself. The permissibility or the obligation to put oneself in a small amount of risk in order to save someone else from a more definite or more serious risk. And it's really dealt with in the context among the modern poskim. It's dealt with in the context of kidney transplants. Am I allowed to donate a kidney? Whereas I'm saving your life, but I may be putting my life in danger. So I'm not going to get into the entire topic. As I said, it's a broad topic. You give an entire class just on this topic. But I'm just going to quote two rulings of the Radbaz. Radbaz was a Sephardi Rishon, early 1400s, mostly in Egypt. He wrote thousands of teshubot on many, many topics. And so in one place, he's asked a question. It's a very unfortunate question, but it's fascinating, but very unfortunate. And the question was, there's a man, a Jewish man, who was to be executed by the Turkish Sultan. And the Turkish Sultan spoke to this man's friend who asked the Sultan to save his life. And the Sultan told this man, if you want so badly to save his life, I'll tell you what, I'll cut off your arm in place of his life. Give me your arm. If you love him so much, so are you willing to give up your arm for him? And so this man's question to the Radbaz was, am I obligated or allowed to have my arm cut off in order to save this person's life? And the Radbaz, in the context of this teshubah, says, that someone who tries to be righteous and puts himself in some amount of danger in order to save his friend from definite danger, he's a righteous fool. He's an idiot. You're very nice intentions, but that's not only is it not an obligation, it's not permitted. You're not permitted to put your life in danger, even if it's in order to save somebody else. You have an obligation to watch your life and watch your health, and you can't risk your life in order to save somebody else. That's the Radbaz in one place. There's a Radbaz somewhere else, different teshubah, different context. He's discussing the Rambam. There's a Perush on the Rambam, and he's discussing in there's a halakha that lo ta'amod adam re'echa, a person not allowed to watch his friend be in danger if he could possibly save him. And Rambam and Shulchan Aruch rule, and that's actually the siman before this in Shulchan Aruch, siman taf kav vav in Hoshe Mishpat, is that if you see your friend in danger, you have to go save him, and if not, you're transgressing a positive commandment or a negative commandment. Lo ta'amod adam re'echa. Do not stand idly by the blood of your friend. So Radbaz here comments. He says, this even if there's a little possible danger to the person who's saving him. Yeah, you got to save him, even if there might be some danger to you. Kigon, for example, you see your friend drowning. There's a riptide, and he's drowning, and you're a better swimmer, and you most likely will be okay. But is there a risk? Of course, there's a risk. So you want to jump. You're able to save him. Are you obligated? At best, you're obligated. You have a commandment that you can't let your friend drown. You're able to save him. You got to save him, even though you may be putting yourself in some danger. Or if he's being attacked by bandits, and you can, you're very you're very confident in your kung fu capabilities, and you can take on the bandits. But is there danger involved? Of course there is. Oh, hayada aba'a alav, or he's being attacked by lions, and you're able to save him. So even though there's some amount of yes, on you. Okay, I'm sure what that is. Okay, even though there's some amount of danger involved, Radbaz says you are obligated. Not only is it permitted, but you're obligated to go save him. So what's the difference? In one place, again, Radbaz says you're putting your life in danger to save somebody else. You're a righteous fool. It's asur, can't do it. Another place he says you got to save your friend, even though you're putting yourself at a little bit of risk. What's the difference? Anybody? Bueller? So Hacham Uvaja.
It's not definite. It's not definite. One is definite, the other's not definite.
Oh no, okay. So if you're definitely gonna die, then for sure there's no question that you.
No. The arm was definite. The arm was going to be definite.
Well, definite what?
That he could die from infection and things like that.
That's possible. It's not definite. Meaning
the other one is swimming, and he's a good swimmer. It's a less of a definite.
Oh, okay, so you're not saying definite now. You're saying degrees. What is more dangerous than
high risk, low risk?
High risk, low risk. Okay, good. So in fact, that's exactly what Hakam says. I'm sure you saw the Teshuvah already.
No, I did not.
You probably did. You're being modest. But Hakam says exactly like that, which is that when is it a righteous fool if you're putting yourself in possible danger in order to save your friend from definite danger? If that possibility is a 50-50 risk, you're talking about safek, meaning high risk, where yes, it's not definite. The other guy's definitely going to die. For you, okay, 50-50. That's where you're not allowed to. But when it's a very small risk, then not only do you have to, but you may be obligated. I don't want to say you're definitely obligated because that may be a mahloket bavi Yerushalmi. But if you're not obligated, but it's almost obligated, very highly recommended. And it could be, according to the Radbaz at least, that a person would be obligated to put himself into some minor risk in order to save somebody else. And in fact, that's why Hakam says the person can give a kidney for kidney transplant. Then if you want to sign up, talk to me privately after. Okay. So now, so that would be if the minimal risk, a small risk to myself, I could do that for the sake of, in order to save somebody else from a definite risk. With vaccines, though, we're discussing not to put yourself in minor danger in order to save somebody else from definite risk to his life, but rather putting myself in a little danger now in order to save myself from greater danger later on. Okay, and and I can get into it, but there's definitely evidence halakhically that my obligation to myself is even higher than my obligation to somebody else, and the amount of risk that I may need to put myself in may be greater than somebody else. So let's start talking about vaccines, and then we'll see where we go with this in halakha l'ma'aseh, which is discussed from way back in the smallpox days. So first vaccine, 1796, Dr. Edward Jenner created the smallpox vaccine. How did he discover smallpox vaccine? So everyone was dying from smallpox except for the milkmaids. Who are the milkmaids? Those are the ladies who used to milk the cow. And he noticed that they weren't dying. They would get some other kind of pox. They would get blisters on their hands where they were milking the cow, which is called cowpox. They may get a little sick from it, but they were not getting smallpox. So Dr. Jenner theorized that that having cowpox is protective against smallpox. So how did he prove this? He extracted fluid from the inside of blisters of a milkmaid, and then injected this blister fluid under the skin of the 8-year-old son of his gardener. And sure enough, the boy developed a cowpox blister on that spot. 6 weeks later, by the way, the fact that we get it in our arm, you could thank Dr. Jenner for that. 6 weeks later, he took smallpox and injected it into this 8-year-old boy. Now, if he was wrong, he would at least have had to give an extra big holiday gift to his gardener that year. But fortunately, the kid did not get smallpox. And he proved that having cowpox is protective against smallpox. And if I inject it into somebody, that will save them from smallpox. And that's how he made smallpox vaccine out of cowpox that was extracted from people who had blisters on their head. So as you can imagine, this was not the world's safest vaccine. You know, if you take pus and from somebody's hands and put it in, inject it into somebody else's arm. So people were getting very sick from it. And occasionally people were even dying from it. And so therefore the poskim of that time dealt with, is this something that's permitted, or are you not allowed to take the chance since it's risky? So very, very interesting. If you look, the Fertility Israel is one of the major commentaries on Mishnah. Yachinu Boaz, big guys down here. That's written by the Fertility Israel, and he lived in the early 1800s. So he talks about this in two places. First place is in his Perush on Pirkei Avot, and he's discussing goyim, righteous goyim, and that there are Gentiles who are righteous, who get a portion in Olam Haba. And he says, and some of them, there's some Gentiles who are so righteous, they were good to the entire world, they did such good things to the world, Hasid Yenner, like the great righteous man Edward Jenner. That he made this pox vaccine. By doing this, he saved tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people from illness and from death. And so he calls him, Edward Jenner is one of the great Hasidim of the Gentiles. This doesn't say, though, that a person's allowed to have the vaccine. It says, great idea, righteous person for doing it, saved many. Am I allowed to take it even though it's risky? So he doesn't address it directly there, but he does address it somewhere else. And that is in Masechet Jumah. I'm not going to discuss the context here, it's a complicated context. But he says, from this context that we're discussing here, it's in the 8th perek of Yuma. Somebody wants to look it up. It's Boaz Od Gimal in the 8th perek of Yuma. It says, the vaccine shall toxin that is permitted to take the smallpox vaccine. Even though 1 out of 1,000 dies by the vaccine. However, if they allow smallpox to go unchecked, the danger would be much more than it would be by taking the vaccine, and therefore a person's allowed to put himself in some minimal risk now in order to save himself a much greater risk later on. Okay, and so the Fertility Israel is the first one really who comes out and says we're taught to take a vaccine even though there may be some risk involved. The Zera Emet, who was a big posek in Italy, his name was Rabbi Ishmael HaKohen, 1800s. So he was asked again. So this is a hot topic. Excuse me. It's time for another drink. Okay. He was asked by a rabbi from a different community. There's this vaccine against smallpox, but it's dangerous. And even though it's rare, some people are even dying from it. People are getting sick, some people are even dying. And people are asking me as a rabbi of my community, is it permitted to take this vaccine even though they may be putting their life at risk? What should we do? And so the Zera Emet discussed exactly this point. Can you put yourself at a little risk in order to save yourself from greater risk later on? And he goes back and forth. In the end, he says very clearly and very resoundingly, yes, a person is permitted to take this vaccine, even though there is risk to life by doing so, because the risk of not taking the vaccine is much greater. Happens to be that, yes. Question? No. Okay. Happens to be that this rabbi then answered him back and said, listen, I'm afraid to give this psak because I may be, to tell people to do something actively that may kill them, I'm not comfortable doing. And the Zera Emet said, okay, you don't got to say anything. Meaning, I understand your predicament, and you don't have to go and forcefully rule that everyone has to have the vaccine, but he still holds halakha l'ma'aseh said that it is permitted, and it even sounds like he's saying that a person should do so. The Zib Hasedek, who was 2 generations later, who's the Zib Hasedek? Zib Hasedek was Rav Abdallah Somer, the chief rabbi in Baghdad. He was the teacher of the Ben Ish Hai. And he had Zib Hasedek and Halchot Yoreh De'ah. And he writes, there's a halakha in Yoreh De'ah that the Ramah brings that if there's an epidemic in the city, a person's obligated to flee the city. You can't stay in the city when there's an epidemic. You're obligated to run away from the city and find somewhere else to be until it's gone. And on this, the Zib Hasedek comments, and he says, he brings this Zera Emet, and he says, when there is a smallpox epidemic, a person is not obligated to flee the city, because right now there's a vaccine. There's a vaccine against pox, and there are Raf'im Mumhim, expert doctors who know how to make it and how to deliver it, and therefore a person does not have to flee. He says, and that's what the Zera Emet says. He says, even though in the end the Zera Emet was not forceful in saying you got to do this, he says, however, Makom Anan, by us, he said, thank God we have our doctors have more expertise in this when they make the vaccine. People are not getting sick anymore from it. People are not dying from it anymore. We do this every single day. We don't worry about it, and therefore it's not even a question that you should take the vaccine. Well, you can at least. Similarly, the Kaf Haim, everyone's more familiar with. He was a student of the Zib Hasedek, early 1900s, and he quotes the Zera Emet and the Zib Hasedek when it comes to the smallpox vaccines. And he says that nowadays in the 1900s that Hakimu Yoter, they're even smarter than they were back then, these doctors. These doctors, it's nothing. They take an injection, they stick it in the arm of a child, and by doing this, kids are saved. It's a no-brainer, he says. Okay. So the halakha, it seems pretty clear that even if there is some risk involved in a vaccine, since it's a very, very small risk, and since it's more likely to save lives than harm, therefore it's permitted at least to take a vaccine, even though there may be some danger involved. Where does this leave us as far as the COVID vaccine? Now, the COVID vaccine, we can't say with certainty how safe it is. So what's the data? First of all, what's the data? So as far as how effective it is, so in the Pfizer study, there was 43,000 people, 43,000 people in the Pfizer study, 21,000 in each arm. 21,000 received the vaccine, and another 21,000 received placebo. There were 162 cases of COVID in the ones who received placebo, and there were 8 cases of COVID in the ones who received the vaccine, which if you do the easy math, it's 1 out of 20, that's 95% protective against COVID. That's, by the way, that's at least 2 weeks after the second vaccination. I just want to throw this out there. There's, a lot of things that are going viral about people getting COVID a week after they get the vaccine. Of course that's going to happen. Meaning, if someone was exposed to COVID before they got vaccinated and it's in their system, the vaccine is not going to stop them from then getting sick from the COVID that's already in the system. We know that could come out a week later, 10 days later, 14 days later. So whatever data we're talking about is at least 14 days after the second vaccine. That's when they looked at how protective it is. And it's the Pfizer vaccine, we saw that it's 95% protective. The Moderna data just came out 2 days ago in New England Journal of Medicine, and they had 30,000 people, again, 15,000 who got the vaccine, 50,000 who got placebo. There were 30 cases of COVID in the placebo arm, with 1 death, and there were 0 cases of COVID in the vaccine arm. So again, very protective. Is there a difference between Moderna and Pfizer? We can't know yet. There's no head-to-head data, but again, very, very protective. Now, what's the safety data? So the known safety data, again, this is what's known from the studies and then from the short experience that we've had over the last couple of weeks in people who got it. So you're talking about 40,000 odd people who received one of these 2 vaccines in the studies, in the trials, and then several 100,000, but we only have a couple of weeks worth of data on them. So, but for the ones in the trials, we have a few months of data. That's it, which means that the trials were basically 3 months from the first injection, 2 months from the second injection. So as far as safety, that's all we know, is how safe it is for 3 months afterwards. And what they found is in pretty much the same in both the Pfizer and the Moderna studies, is that roughly an equivalent amount of people died in both arms. I think it was in the Pfizer study, it was 2 in the vaccine arm and 3 in the placebo arm. The 2 in the vaccine arm, 1 died from cardiac arrest and 1 committed suicide. Does not seem to be related to the vaccine at all. And in the Moderna study, again, 2 people died in the vaccine arm. I think 4 two people died in the study arm, in the vaccine one, 4 in the placebo arm. And again, it was the two cardiac arrests did not seem to be related to the vaccine. In the placebo arm, there were 2 cardiac arrests, 1 stroke, and 1 from an unknown cause. As far as serious adverse events, they did not find any serious adverse events in that time period. There's been a lot of concern about allergic reactions. What's the data as far as allergic reactions? So in the first 300,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine that were given, which now we know because allergic reactions happen very soon after giving it. So that, at least we're confident that we have that data. So the first 300,000 people vaccinated, 6 developed a severe anaphylactic reaction. And so that's why there's a warning that someone who has history of anaphylactic reactions should be cautious about the vaccine. In fact, they modified that to say it's only if you've had an anaphylactic reaction to a vaccine in the past. A person who has anaphylactic reaction to other medications or to food or to something else, they do not think that translates into a risk over here. Again, even in this, there's only 1 out of 50,000 who had a serious reaction. So, Jack. Muted.
So I have a question.
Yes.
First of all, so far great. Second of all, fine. With a lot of the discussion now is about children getting the vaccine, even though it's not happening yet. But from a Halakhic perspective, we don't know what the future effects might be for children. So one of the concerns that people have is vaccinating children. We understand for adults, it's been proven and so on and so forth. But from a Halakhic perspective, seeing that they don't necessarily are in serious risk or in great risk, how do the Chachamim address that?
Great point, Jack. And it's a moot point right now because they're not going to allow kids to get vaccinated for a long time because none of these studies included kids. So I would imagine that there's going to be more rigorous studies for kids and also for pregnant women. Okay, so we don't have data on that at all. And so for now, there's no immediate plan to vaccinate children. And I don't know when that's going to be exactly, but I would imagine that there's going to be more testing done before that. So I don't have an answer for you on that at all. And by anyone else who has questions, just unmute yourself and ask, because I can't see everyone at the same time.
What about somebody who's taking immunosuppressant medication?
Okay, another great question, and I'll get to that right now. Any other questions first? Okay, so yeah.
I have a question, everyone.
Who's that?
Like Joey Sofa. Joey Sofa,
Hey,
how are you?
Yeah, good.
But we have only data basically for a short term.
Correct.
Like 3 months worth of data. We
Correct.
don't know if there's any long-term effect. Does that
Right.
affect
Okay,
the
good.
Halakhic
So
outcome?
that-
Because we were talking about smallpox, you're talking about the development of the vaccine over years and years, and then they finally say, okay, it's not dangerous anymore.
Right.
Over
Exactly.
here, we're talking about a short period of time. Is there something that we should discuss about that?
Correct. Okay, so that's what we're getting to now. So now, should we or must we worry about possible long-term effects? And where does that take us as far as halakha goes? So like I said, there's no data on. We only have 2-3 months of data as far as side effects. So all we can do is ask expert opinions, and those opinions are going to be based on what is expected from this kind of vaccine, and it's a new kind of vaccine, how it works, and what kind of side effects have been seen in similar kind of vaccines done experimentally in other situations. And basically what that means is we have opinions of the doctors. And the majority of the medical organizations and vast majority of doctors are in favor of taking the vaccine. Does that have halakhic status? Which means, api halakha, should I or must I rely on the opinions of the doctors? Are they trustworthy? Is this something that has halakhic status? Do we say, if they're not a religious Jew, then maybe I don't rely on them, or maybe they, it has no status at all, and maybe the halakhic authorities have to first look into it and see the validity before we rule on it. So basically, we're going to discuss: do we rely on doctors the halakha? And first thing I can tell you is that there are times when we don't, and there are times that if we have reason to, and there's evidence that doctors may have ulterior motives, we certainly do not. There's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah that's discussing a place where the doctors are pagans, idol worshippers, and these pagans apparently would take any opportunity to kill a Jew if they were able to. And so the halakha is over here. If there's somebody who's seriously ill and he may die, but he may survive without medical intervention, possible, asur to go to a pagan doctor. Why? As she says, because we're worried he's going to kill you. And therefore, you can't risk the possibility that you might live anyway. You can't take that risk because the guy's going to kill you. But daimet, if the guy is definitely going to die without medical intervention, then you go to the pagan doctor because, okay, there's a chance that he may save you. So you see that where that we don't always trust doctors, and if we specifically have evidence that the doctors are up to something, then we do not trust them. However, that is the exception to the rule. If you look in Chot Nida.
Wait, can you just state that source again?
That is Gemara Avodah Zarah, Daf Kaf Zayin Amud Bet, on top of the page. And by the way, it's put in Halakha also. It's put in Shulchan Aruch, and this is a major source. Actually, that a person's allowed to risk if a person only has a short time to live, and his only chance of cure is to do something risky. He's allowed to take that risk in order to save, in order to be cured, even though it's risking his short amount of life that he has right now. And this is a major source to this. Okay, so it's a famous Gemara. There's a Gemara need that, and the truth is, Rabbi Asher Weiss and his shiur. If you want to look, Rabbi Asher Weiss has a shiur, a class on COVID vaccines. You could Google it. It's an hour long. He has one in Hebrew, another one in English. He speaks perfect English. He's from America, actually, and it's worth listening to. So over there, he brings half a dozen different places that discuss how the rabbis rely on doctors for halakha. But this is a place that's pretty explicit. So I wanted to quote this, and this is. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Sadok. Rabbi Elazar, who's the son of Rabbi Sadok, he said there was a maaseh. There's a situation that a lady saw something and she wasn't sure if it was blood or not. It was solid. It was red, but it was solid. They weren't sure if it was blood, and so they went and they asked my father, Rabbi Sadok, he says, and my father didn't know. Never saw something like this before. So what do you do? Abash al hakamim. He asked the rabbis. He went to the whole yeshiva and says, did anyone ever hear of this kind of thing? Is this blood? Is she tameh or she's not tameh? And they didn't know. Hakamim sha'alu larofim. So they went and they asked the doctors. And in fact, the doctors gave their opinion. The rabbi said we have a way of testing it out. Okay, but you see that it's valid unless you have a reason not to believe doctors specifically, but otherwise you believe medical opinion when it comes to matters of halakha, even things like that could be asur karet and things that are the Shabbat. Certainly, we rely on doctors to know if something is pekuach nefesh and mechalel Shabbat.
But in that case, they knew. Here,
Who's talking? I can't see.
Morris Arking.
Hey, Hakam Moshe, how are you?
How are you?
Good.
So in that case with the blood and the nidah, they knew. In the other case, in Avodah Zarah, they were corrupt. Here we have doctors that we don't suspect that they're corrupt, but you are saying they don't know because they don't have data. So what gives them the status of a doctor in this case?
Okay,
because
good.
Doctors go by data.
Hey, good question. So if there's data, you don't need the doctors, right? We're talking to doctors because we need their medical opinion and their educated opinion. Over here, I want to mention something else about the vaccine. I forgot I wanted to mention it before. It slipped my mind. I didn't have enough to drink, obviously. So, and that is that it's a new kind of vaccine. It's what's called an RNA vaccine. Let me just tell you a little bit of background about vaccines. What is a vaccine and how does it work? A vaccine is something that you introduce into the body, which will create an immune response in the body towards a foreign cell, which means that a foreign cell, whether it's a virus, which is not a cell, but okay, a foreign particle. So whether it's a virus or it's bacteria, fungus, cancer, even so anything that's foreign or is not the body's own cells, the body will react to. A vaccine is something that will elicit that immune response in the body, so that now the body has antibodies and other cells that remember this foreign particle and are able to fight against it. How does it do that? So the body normally, how does the body recognize a foreign particle? There's proteins on the surface of any cell, and if it's a foreign cell, we call those proteins an antigen. Antigen is something that's foreign, that's not in our cells, that's on a foreign cell, and that's a protein sticking out from the cell surface, and other immune cells can see that or feel it and recognize it and therefore fight against it and know that that's a foreign particle. So in the past, there's really two ways of making a vaccine. One is similar to what Edward Jenner did way back in 1796, which is I take a virus and hopefully I weaken it or kill it, and inject that into a person, and the virus itself will cause an immune reaction, and I weaken it enough that it should not cause illness, or I kill it. Now, a killed virus very often won't elicit an immune response. It has to be alive in order to make an immune response, just because of how viruses work. But a live virus that's weakened will, but you run the risk of that actually causing disease in people whose immune system may not be great. The other way of doing it is to take a virus particle, which has an antigen on it, to take a particle of a cell, that antigen, and take that, chop up the cell or the virus in certain ways that, and you know which particles are in there, you inject that antigen into the person, and then the person will have a response to that antigen and create antibodies towards it. This vaccine works differently. This is an RNA vaccine. What does that do? So normally, we have DNA in every one of our cells, and that DNA is producing RNA, which then produces a protein, which means that our body is producing 40 million proteins every minute, something like that. And the way it does that is the DNA is translated into what's called RNA, and the RNA goes as a messenger to go and make the cell make a protein. Once the RNA makes that protein, the RNA is then destroyed by the cell. So now, if the RNA vaccine is RNA, which will tell cells to produce this antigen, a corona antigen. So we're not giving antigen, we're giving RNA, and that is telling cells to produce antigen, and then that RNA is destroyed. So the actual vaccine only lasts for a very short period of time in the body before it's destroyed. And then that produces antigen, and then the body sees that antigen and it has an immune response to it, but that's not the vaccine. So most feel that this is a much safer kind of vaccine because it does not have to stay in your system for X amount of time in order to elicit a response, because this just encodes for the protein, which then makes a response, and the protein can stay for however long it needs to stay for, but RNA is destroyed immediately. So it should be a safer kind of vaccine, and that's what medical data suggests. We don't have proof yet, obviously we need more time, but it has been used experimentally for different things, for cancers.
Albert.
Yes, is that
It's
Nathan?
Yeah, Nathan Powell.
I miss you, Nathan.
Good, I miss you too. My question is this vaccine once in a lifetime, or you have to take it periodically?
Great question, Nathan.
Because measles, once you
got it. Great question. So Nathan's asking, is it a one-shot deal like what's a one-shot deal anymore? Polio.
Chickenpox. They give kids chickenpox.
Okay, right, something like that. Or is it something that has to be given periodically, like a flu vaccine or something else? And right now the answer is we don't know. So what we know is we give 2 vaccines 3 weeks apart, and the second one acts as a booster, and that gives that 95+% protection. But how long will this protect for? All we know right now is it'll protect for 3 months. We'll protect for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years. We have no idea, and only time will tell. So I don't know. Worst case scenario, Nathan, it means that you'll have to get a vaccine every 3 months. Okay. But right now we're talking about today. So, or in probably around 2 weeks or so, and at which time the vaccine will be available to the public in New York and New Jersey. By the way, you can go to Florida and you get it wherever you want. So now, given that data, most doctors feel that this is a safe vaccine, and we do not expect to have side effects down the line, based on our experience with other vaccines, with antigen vaccines, with other things that stimulate protein production in cells. We don't have any reason to think that there's going to be a dangerous side effect down the line. There are doctors, and you see some of them on their clips on YouTube or whatever, who are very vocal and say you shouldn't do this and it's very, very dangerous. So what do you do in that kind of situation? When I have some doctors saying yes and some doctors saying no. So again, you open up Shulchan Aruch and you're looking at Chod Yom Kippur. And in Chod Yom Kippur, we have halachot about who fasts. And halakha says, whenever there's a doubt, we tell the person not to fast because we worry about pikuach nefesh, about risk to life more than anything else. So, one doctor says he has to eat. Other doctor says, no, he'll be fine, does not need to eat, it's not a risk to life. What do? You feed him on Yom Kippur. Why? Because there's one opinion that says you have to. However, later it says, if I have two doctors who say, other way around. If I have two doctors saying eno sarich, that he does not need to eat, and one doctor says sarich, what do? You do not feed him. Even on Yom Kippur, even though there's one doctor who says that if he doesn't eat, he could die, doesn't make a difference because you go by the majority opinion of doctors. And here we clearly have the majority opinion of doctors. And Mishnah Berurah says it's not only the doctors, number of doctors, but it's also the expertise of the doctors. And clearly the major experts in the field are saying that that's something to worry about. Based on this, Rav Asher Weiss says, the halakha, he says, so I'm reading inside. He says, even though I can't tell you that there's an obligation to take the COVID vaccine, why can't I tell you that there's an obligation? Because someone who wants to continue to wear masks and to keep away from people, you can, which means that you can prevent yourself from getting it and you can prevent it from being spread to others by just staying home and not seeing anybody. If you want to do that, then that's your prerogative. And I can't tell you that you're forced then to take the vaccine. He says, however, it's a very good idea too. And it's highly
another question. Okay.
Wait, let me just finish reading it. And he says, and I suspect that once there's a lot of people vaccinated, that some of these restrictions will be lessened because a lot of people will have already been vaccinated and be immune. And therefore, the people who won't be vaccinated are also going to let down their guard, and they will then be at risk and put others at risk too. So I don't recommend it, but I can't tell you that you have to. Hakam Ishaq Yosef goes through the same sources, and he says slightly differently. And again, he says, all these rabbis, the Tivei Israel, Zera Emet, the Rav Abdallah Somech, Kaf HaChaim, they all said even in their days that it's okay to take a vaccine, even though there was some risk to life of having the vaccine at that time. It says, all the more so nowadays, Kal v'chomer, that the vaccines nowadays are much safer, definitely, than they were back then. And I got to tell you, no one is going to say that it's more risky to get the vaccine than to get corona. Over 1.8 million people have died from COVID already. I don't think anyone is thinking that you're going to have 1 million people dying from a vaccine. So I think everyone's going to agree on that. But so anyway, Hakam Ishaq Yosef says nowadays the vaccines are even safer, and that as long as the doctor said that you should get the vaccine, lo rak rashai, you're not just allowed, ela sarich lekabel hasun, you're obligated to get the vaccine in order to prevent illness, so that you won't get it and you won't spread it to others. And even someone young, that most of them do not get so sick from the vaccine. I mean, from COVID rather, and it's not a big risk to them. However, if they get sick, then they have the risk of spreading it to people who are either older or have other illnesses, and they will then cause sakana has v'shalom, and therefore everyone young or old should get this vaccine. and it's an obligation, and that's how he ends.
Albert.
Yes, Nathan.
So if someone has pre things like they have a weak heart, they have diabetes, they have a weak heart, they had a liver transplant, should they be taking the vaccine?
Those are the people who need to take the vaccine more than anybody else, Nathan. Right, so those are the people who are at highest risk for having a bad course if they have COVID. And those people, I say, you be the first ones online. Don't even ask questions. Okay.
How about people who have had it already?
So people who have had it already, we don't know how long that immunity lasts. Certainly the people who are getting a second time, even though it's not so common, antibodies do go away after a certain amount of time. And so it's recommended that unless you've had COVID within the last 90 days, you should be vaccinated. That's a recommendation.
How would you gauge, this is Jesse Salem, how would you gauge the Johnson & Johnson that might be coming out, which is made the old way?
Yeah, so Johnson & Johnson. So in some ways, it's a more familiar kind of vaccine because it's made the old ways, and at the same time, it may, there's a concern that may be less safe because you're injecting virus, but anyway, we don't have data on. I don't have data available to me yet on the J&J vaccine.
So bottom line, people with poor kidney function.
Okay, so the people who have actually been raising their hands. So I'm gonna. How do I call somebody raising their hand?
What about people with poor kidney function?
People with poor kidney function should definitely take the vaccine. All of them.
So it's mitzvah and an obligation?
You can just call them out and they can answer, Albert.
Oh, okay. Anyone who's raising
I'll lower their hands. Abraham, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the wonderful shiur. I was attending a class by Rabbi Willig, and he brought down the same decision by Rabbi Usher Weiss. And he, the last thing that you said with wearing masks, he said he feels that it's not possible because you could still get infected and you could still possibly infect other people. Okay. So he said, yeah, that was his point.
Right. Okay, very good. Excellent. Who else?
Rena?
Don't call on Daniel, Jack. Say him for last.
Yeah. Okay, Rena.
Yes, hi.
Rena. Go ahead.
Hi. Okay, so you're talking about all of this about suspecting that restrictions are going to be lessened once people have it, and we're talking about getting the vaccine so you don't spread it or get infected and spread it to other people. But it's written over and over and over again, and even the World Health Organization, and there's articles with Fauci saying it as well, that there is no guarantee that these vaccines that are out now stop you from getting the virus or transmitting it to other people. So how are we using that as a guideline to tell people that everybody should go out and get vaccinated so that we stop the transmission? The way that it is right now, this is only FDA authorized for emergency use. It's not an approved vaccine. We don't know, as your own admission, what the side effects may be down the line. And it doesn't stop you from getting it or transmitting it to other people. Wait, how are we?
So, okay, good. So I agree with everything you said to the last line. It's not true that it does not. What's true is that that it does not stop you from getting it. What is true is that we can't guarantee, even though with other vaccines people don't get it. If you get a chickenpox vaccine, you are not going to spread chickenpox to somebody else, right?
That's not actually true either. But okay.
Unless you get it. It's not 100% protected.
I'm not going to have that.
Okay, let's listen to the doctor. Let's listen to the doctor, please.
Okay. Anyway, I can't handle myself. Okay. I'm good. Don't worry. Thanks, guys, for sticking up for me. So most likely, the likelihood is that a person won't get it at all and won't spread it. Is it a guarantee? No. And have we been surprised by COVID before? Certainly. And therefore, we're leaving that possibility open. But that it's an unlikely scenario. And therefore, everyone's assuming that you won't get it and it won't spread.
Next question, Pauline, please.
Wow. Okay. Thanks.
Albert, hi.
So I know that you said that if someone asks if they already had COVID and they have antibodies, do you recommend them getting vaccinated? and you said you don't know how long the antibodies last if you had COVID. How do you know how long the immunity lasts from the vaccine, or how long do they think it lasts from the vaccine?
Right, so all we know right now is that it lasts 3 months. Beyond that, it wasn't tested. So again, we don't know 3 months, 3 years, 30 years. We just don't know. So
Right.
I myself had COVID back in March. I still have antibodies. I got my first vaccine last Wednesday. Have not yet grown a third ear, and so I think we're all okay on that. And you know, as far as that goes, and I'll get my second vaccine in 2.5 weeks from now.
Why would you take the vaccine? Why would you take the vaccine if you have antibodies?
Because I have responsibility to my patients to make sure that I don't get COVID. Because if I get COVID, they can be in danger. And so
I don't mean you.
Hey, listen, Jesse, listen. So therefore, the fact that I have antibodies, we don't know at all if that guarantees that I cannot get COVID. And even if it does, we don't know the fact that I had antibodies last week means that I still have it now. And therefore, I certainly have an obligation to be vaccinated, as would anybody who's either older or has medical problems that put them at risk. Don't bank on your antibodies and take the vaccine. Okay.
Daniel, covered.
Yeah. Dan.
So I just wanted to, if you allow me, to make 2 points. A lot of people concerned about a lot of people concerned about the risks of the vaccines. It's a new vaccine. It is a very new vaccine. This is the first time we've used mRNA vaccines, but we do have experience with them. They've been undergoing research for over a decade in animal studies and so forth, and they've been shown to be very safe. Again, this is the first time they're using humans, but they're not brand new to the scientific community.
I think we should focus on the Halakhic.
The second thing is, many people are afraid of long-term effects and causing mutations and so forth. It should be clear that mRNA does not ever touch the DNA. It does not get into the nucleus in the cell and ever touch a person's DNA, so it's not possible for it to cause mutations. I know that's a big thing, a big rumor out there that you're messing with DNA. It doesn't touch DNA.
Very good.
Thank
you. Thanks, Dave.
I have a Halakha question.
Next question. 1 minute. We're going in order. People who raise their hand. There's somebody with the name iPhone with purple.
All right.
There's a lady here. Okay, unmute yourself. Go ahead.
The last question we haven't addressed is those with allergic reactions should not take the vaccine, and those who are pregnant should not take the vaccine. Is that correct?
So actually, and I wish I have it upstairs actually, but they came out with recommendations of who should not and who you should be cautious with as far as taking vaccines. So right now, as far as people who have allergic reactions, they're only saying that someone who has had an anaphylactic reaction to a vaccine in the past should be cautious with this vaccine. Okay, obviously someone who had an anaphylactic reaction to the first injection of COVID, they say should not get the second injection. But if you had an anaphylactic reaction to another vaccine, then it should be done with caution. With caution means in a monitored setting with an EpiPen nearby in case you need it, monitored for the first half hour after getting the injection to make sure that there's no anaphylaxis. So that's what the recommendation.
Hi, Amelia.
What about pregnant women?
One second. We're going in order, please. 1 second, please.
Listening to Dr. Matalon.
Go ahead.
Pregnant women.
Go ahead.
Okay.
No, there's a lady asking a question. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So just to address, so pregnant women, I as far as I know, the studies were not done on pregnancy, and so therefore everyone's covering themselves by saying pregnant women should not take it. We just don't know if there could be effects on the uterus, even on the fetus rather, even though it's unlikely.
Yeah.
But you know, the recommendations are not to until further tests are done. Next. Let's go, Jack. Come on. We can't hear you, Jack.
They have to unmute. Ronnie Tower, we're ready for you. Just unmute your phone.
Okay, yes. Doctor, did I hear you say correctly that a person who gets the vaccine and a high likelihood of not getting it and also cannot transmit it once they have the vaccine?
Okay, so yes and no. I said that someone who gets the vaccine, they are 95% at least protected from getting sick. Now,
Can they transmit it?
someone brought up, can you have it and not and transmit it even though you don't get sick? So we're leaving that possibility open, even though it seems that that's pretty far-fetched. But again, who knows? But with our expertise with other vaccines would seem to suggest that that's not the case.
So one who had the vaccine should still wear a mask after?
Right, exactly. So until we have that data, it's still recommended that people who have the vaccine wear a mask.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a woman whose name is iPhone. She's been having her hand raised for a while. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Is that Amelia?
There you go.
Yeah, it's Amelia. I want to ask you
Okay,
something.
Amelia,
Look,
great.
okay, the flu vaccine, when you take the flu vaccine, you can get the flu. Isn't that true?
From the vaccine? No.
No, not from the vaccine. You can get the flu, I'm saying.
Oh, of course. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
I
Yes.
mean, many people get the vaccine
Many
and get
people
the flu.
yes, exactly.
So why is everybody so afraid? Take the vaccine. It's better than you're protecting other people and you're protecting yourself.
Okay, so let me address this, and then I can ask people. You know, I very much appreciate everyone's opinions on whether you should get taken or not, but let's try to keep it, you know, focused. But the flu vaccine is not a great vaccine because there are many different strains of flu, and we can't get them all. And so we guess as far as, you know, which flu you might get, and we put them in the vaccine. And people often get the other kind of flu that's not in the vaccine. So that's why every year it's maybe more protective, less protective. But this, as far as we know, covers all the strains. It's this new strain, and all the vaccine manufacturers are rushing to try to prove that their vaccine covers it, because obviously the one who does is going to be highlighted and will make a lot more money. If the current vaccine does not cover the new strain, mRNA vaccines are very easy to modify, very easy, and therefore within 2-3 weeks they can make it so that it'll cover the new strain. Anyway, and that's why in Europe they're delaying the second injection of vaccine for a couple of months until they see about the new strain. And here in America, we're not recommending that, and that is still a matter of debate. But right now, recommendation is at least get that first vaccine. You're not 95% protected, but you have some protection from it, and we'll take it from there.
Albert, I'll let you decide if any of these questions need to be shelved for not being halakha related.
Okay.
With that in mind, we're going to go to Mrs. Tobias, who's next with the question.
Yes, thank you. It's actually a husband. So I wanted to know, we established that it's good to take this vaccine. It's beneficial to a person. Can we say a beracha when we take that vaccine, like Tov Metiv or
Great question. And Rav Asher Weiss has a shiur on that as well. He says, can you say Shehayanu or Tov Metiv on it? And he says no. Okay, without getting into detail, but great question. Okay.
Okay,
so why is the answer no? Why would
okay, again, different shiur, different class, but I love the question.
Joe Katan. Uncle Joe. Okay, next. We'll go to Leah. Leah H.
Hello, Joe Katan.
Oh, go ahead,
Hey,
Joe.
Muted. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I hear you,
sorry.
Joe.
Okay, sorry. So is it correct that people who had the virus and then had the vaccine are experiencing difficulties a little more serious than other people? And if so, what does halakha say about them being able to take it?
Okay, so it's not consistent. I had COVID. I still have antibodies. I got the vaccine. My arm killed me for a day. I literally couldn't lift it. But then that was it. Other people who did not have COVID, some of them got fever. A lot of people are getting fever. Some get bad headaches. No, whatever. But all that is just showing your immune system is working in order to make a reaction to this antigen that's being presented. It's all good. So, but and that's not dangerous in any way. So you take some Advil if you need to take off a day if it's really bad. But that will not have any halakhic ramifications.
Okay, Leah H. Next question, please.
Hi. Okay, so I had COVID back in March, and I had it really bad, where I was hospitalized, and right now I'm actually dealing with breathing issues where my lungs were damaged due to COVID, because I've never ever gotten sick before this, and now that I did back in March, I have a really hard time breathing. Just even going up the stairs could be hard for me. What do I do? Like, what does someone do if they had it, but their symptoms are so bad that they're still dealing with them? But I've been testing negative ever since I've had it. I did get it twice, actually. I am one of those that did finally test negative and then finally did get it again. I did take a rapid the first time and it came out negative, but then when they did an overnight, it did come out positive, which I did have to quarantine again. I did have to separate myself from work, from all my coworkers and everybody. But what do I do, or anybody, not
Okay,
just me?
So this is a personal medical question. I'm going to send you my cell phone and you can ask me personally after the class, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, next comes Joey Buchanan.
How do I?
I got it. Joey Buchanan. Oh, I don't know if there's a chat enabled, so.
Hey, Dr. Matalon.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's a chat enabled here,
What's
so I think what we'll have to do is send it into the rabbi or to the Bet Torah Instagram. Send in your question, and we'll forward
there's
the
no
rabbi
chatting here? Okay.
number
Okay.
two.
Okay, so Leah H, I do want to address your concerns. Obviously, you were hit very hard by the vaccine, by the virus, and so we'll have to find a way of
Reach out to the shul, and we'll get you in touch with Dr. Matalon.
Yeah, so, good idea. Chat to the shul and get in touch with me.
Next,
Who do I reach
next
out
is
to in
Joey
the shul?
Buchanan. Call the main office, ask for Sally Haber. He'll give you Dr. Matalon's number.
Perfect. Sounds
Perfect.
good.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Hey, Dr. Matalon.
Who's that?
Thanks so much for doing this. Can you hear me?
Yeah, who's that?
Great. Joey Buchanan. How are you? So,
hey, Joe.
Hey, nice to hear from you. So anyway, beautiful shiur in class. Thank you. I just wanted to just a sort of a point of clarification. It was mentioned before by somebody that, and I just don't want other people hearing and then getting sort of misinformation. Someone had mentioned that there's some evidence that the COVID vaccine does not. We don't know about protecting against transmission, but someone said it doesn't protect against getting the virus, and that's just not true. The largest study with 50,000 patients showed 95% protection against getting the COVID-19.
Right. So let me just clarify that. So what the study shows is that you're not going to get sick. The question was, could it still be in your system where you could transmit it? And that was really the question, and that we think not, but we can't be 100% sure. That's the answer, right?
Right, transmission is a question, but it definitely, I mean, there's no doubt that the vaccine is proven to protect. Right,
people
just,
not getting sick
just
from it.
people know. Well, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank
you. Vicky Mizrahi, you're next.
Vicky, you there?
You have to unmute yourself, please.
Yes,
Oh,
okay.
sorry,
We can hear you
hello?
now. No problem. Yes.
Hello?
Hi.
What about like any side effects? Like I heard there's like side effects with fertility issues, and it says in Halakha like we should be fruitful and have children. So how do we take that risk?
Okay, great question. I'm actually happy someone mentioned this because I do want to address it. There is zero basis for that concern. I don't know where it came from, but it's not based on the fact that we found that some people who got the vaccine were infertile. It's only been tested for 3 months. How can you tell someone's infertile? Hello, right?
So
But,
how could we be sure that it's not going to cause any issues if it wasn't tested for a longer period of time?
Good. So in situations like this, where
how do we know in 5 years down the line that?
Right, and that's something that we address. So according to halakha, what you do in those circumstances is you ask for the best expert opinion that you could get. And right now, best expert opinion does not think that there's going to be significant side effects down the line. What I would say
If there's no evidence or testing, how could somebody know for that?
Right. So you could always postulate it. Who knows? It may make a person grow 10 feet taller in 10 years from now. But there has to be some basis for it for us to be concerned. Right now, there's no basis for thinking that a vaccine can make someone infertile. What is true is that there's some evidence that COVID is making some people infertile, at least in males. So I would be more concerned about not getting a vaccine and catching COVID and becoming infertile that way. So, but again, we can't know everything 100%. What I would say, and put myself a little bit out in order to say this, is people who are at high risk, they should be running to get the vaccine as soon as it comes out. People who are next tier, which means that not high risk, so they have the luxury of waiting a couple of months until, all the people at risk got the vaccine before they get it. Everyone should get it, but if you want to wait a couple of months just to make extra sure that nothing comes out, within the next couple of months, I don't have a problem with that. But as long as you're not holding out from not getting the vaccine and then putting yourself and other people at risk for transmission by doing so.
Okay, Joe Glazer, Dr. Joe Glazer.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Albert, thanks for giving this class. I'm just going to just chime in with a couple of extra points because I'm getting a lot of the same questions that you are. I don't have your level of expertise, but I can tell you people are focusing a lot on this word. There's no guarantee, for like quoting from Dr. Fauci. No vaccine has ever been a guarantee. Nothing's 100%. 95% efficacy is better than the flu shot. You yourself said the flu shot is not that great. It's about 70%. And yet most of us, unless you have a problem with reactions to the flu shot or have a contraindication, get our flu shots. So this vaccine is actually better out of the starting gate than the flu shot already is, and that's an established shot. People are afraid because it's a new technology. Your brother made a very good comment saying that the technology's been available for over a decade in research. The FDA does its due diligence, and that has to also count for a lot.
Right.
For people getting side effects from it, the trials already stated this. It's been public knowledge. And finally, the last thing I want to comment on is I had to address this with a lot of patients and family members, is the fertility issue that people are talking about from the vaccine. It can all be traced, as far as I can tell, to one guy who worked at Pfizer who has an axe to grind with the company and is taking some legal action, stirring up the pot. And if you try to Google it, it goes back to this one blog post or obscure article that he wrote. That's where it all comes from. That's it.
It could be. I don't know. So
Anyway, get ready.
There's no medical basis.
Exactly.
In the studies that were done. So right now it's just people throwing things out there.
I have it bookmarked. I'll re-forward it to you privately.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Okay.
Eddie. Thanks again.
Yeah. Okay.
Eddie, unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, doctor. How you doing? It's Eddie Hamlin.
How you doing, Eddie?
Great. Quick question.
Yeah.
Are we ever going to be able to get to herd immunity if it's not? In other words, if we're saying it's 95%. So now, if it's 95%, and if it's like the flu shot that we're going to keep on getting it, having to get it, are we ever going to get herd immunity?
So it depends. If everyone gets the vaccine, we'll get the herd immunity. There's no question. If even if we could get 80% of the population at any given time who are not susceptible to it, then we'll have more or less herd immunity, at least to the extent that it won't be the big problem it is right now.
Can we halakhically make it that everybody has to take it?
So that's what Hakam Ishaq said. Hakam Ishaq Yosef said you got to take it, whether you're young or old, because you are you can't allow the virus to be spread, and if it's spread through you.
Where does it say in halakha that you have to take it?
We're going one at a time, please. Finish, please.
So Hakam Ishaq says even if you yourself are not at risk for getting very sick from COVID, you're a young, healthy person, but you have an obligation to everybody else in society, because if you get sick, then you can spread it to other people. And most older people got it from some younger person, and therefore it's an obligation. That's what Hakam Ishaq Yosef ruled.
I have a question. All right, thank you. My turn. Sorry. Is a person who doesn't wear a mask in public and goes into places like that, can we consider that person a rodif?
Again, give me the scenario.
Person who doesn't want to wear a mask, says it's all whatever he wants to say, and we have ways to go about it. A person who doesn't want to vaccinate, can we consider a person like that a rodif?
Okay, so you're asking my halakhic opinion. This is not part of the class. I give it, but you have to take it with a grain of salt because I'm just a doctor. But a rodef would be if a person has COVID or thinks he has COVID or is afraid to test for COVID and is having symptoms and goes to a public place and gets people sick, he's definitely a rodef. That's a very serious offense, and there's halachot I don't want to go into, but there's serious halachot that what you can do to prevent a rodef from harming other people. But someone who just doesn't take precautions, he's oved on an aseh, lo ta'aseh, lo tasim damim bebetecha, lo tamar dam re'echa, possibly those kind of things. But but I would not consider him a rodef unless he actually has the illness. Yes.
Okay, I think we have two more questions. The first one's from
Fine.
Jackie's iPhone.
Okay, Jackie's iPhone. Which Jackie is this?
Hi, Rabbi. This is Jack Oved.
Hi, Jack.
I'm a 25-year-old, thank God, healthy. So you mentioned that Chacham Yitzchak Yosef says everybody is tzarich to take this vaccine. Is there a timetable for that right now? The high risk are taking it right now. What's
Good question. Good question. And right now the answer is no. That no one says how quickly, but obviously, you know, if the vaccine's available to you and you're delaying, then you may be putting people at risk, and this would be, you know, the kind of issue we're talking about. If you're planning on taking it, but you wait, you know, you don't want to be the first one online. You want to wait to be, you know, the you know, a little later on. I don't think that's that big an issue because right now they're vaccinating as rapidly as they can. So you're not holding things up by you not being the first person online.
We're gonna go
So
to
I'm
Mount
not.
Franco.
So I'm not obligated. So I'm not obligated to call all these different health lines and make sure to try to get a vaccine
Not
tomorrow
today.
if I can.
Not today. Ask me in a month and a half from now. The answer might be different. Okay.
When they say 95% effective, does that mean that 5% of the people who take the injection can get sick?
So again, that's based on the Pfizer data. So
Right.
so which means that 162 people who got placebo got COVID. 8 people who got the vaccine got COVID. That's in the Pfizer study. That's why they say 95%. In the Moderna study, 30 people who got placebo got the infection. 0 people who got the vaccine got the infection. So over there, it's better, 100%. But we can never say 100%.
That seems to be 100%, not
It seems to be 100%. Again, we don't know if there's real difference, and we don't know, you know. Anyway, but that's the data we have. So that's why we're saying 95%.
We're gonna go to Mal Franco. 1 second. We're trying to go in order here. Mal Franco, former president. Mal, no.
Now you there? Don't be late for your appointment. Okay.
Mal, on mute.
Okay. 3, 2.
Now you there?
Okay, iPhone. We're gonna go back to Mal. Lady iPhone.
Hi, Al, I'm here. I have a question. When you talked about herd immunity, if everyone takes the vaccine, so do you also mean that anyone who has had the also needs to take the vaccine?
Yeah. So let me reiterate that. That was asked already. But yes, people who had the virus, their immunity is not forever. There are definitely people who are getting it the second time. And so, recommendations are that unless you had the virus within the last 90 days, that you should take the vaccine.
Even if you have antibodies?
Even if you have antibodies. Okay. And that may change a couple of years from now when we know more. But right now we don't know enough to say antibodies are good enough, don't take the vaccine. Okay.
Thank
you. You're welcome.
Mal, go ahead, Mal.
Yeah, mine's a personal question. I just want to know if the doctor's going to be on time for my appointment tomorrow.
Get out of here, Mal.
I'll talk about it. Very nice.
Okay. Daniel, is your name Dr. Fauci or is that somebody else?
No,
I
that's
am
somebody
not
else. Yeah.
Dr. Fauci. No, okay. So there's somebody.
Yes,
who
hi,
named
somebody
himself
else.
Dr. Fauci.
Yeah. Fauci gets the last question. Okay.
It's Judas,
Oh, hold on now.
Judas Sutton. Let me put the picture. Hi. Okay. My question is, if somebody else, let's say there's 2 people in the world, one person gets the vaccine, the other person doesn't, he doesn't have to worry about getting it from the other person.
That's called herd immunity, right? That basically, if there are no people around for you to spread it to, if you get sick, then it's not going to spread. That's the basic idea.
I guess my question is, if people get the vaccine, why do they care if someone else got the vaccine or not? They don't have to worry about that.
Okay,
get the vaccine.
Not related, please.
Okay,
Because it's getting late.
Okay, yeah, okay, Jack. I'm going to spin this off into a major halakha question. Okay, and that's as follows. So let's say everyone is getting the vaccine. I could say, listen, I don't want to have to deal with who knows what possible side effects, and therefore I'll let everyone else get the vaccine and I won't. Right? Now, the reality is we all know if you say this, or someone else will say this too, and the third person will say this too, but you could argue and say, if everyone else does their due diligence, then I am not doing anything wrong by not getting the vaccine. So Rabbi Asher Weiss had a shiur on this topic as well, and he said, I don't want to get into it so much, but I'll give you the Gemara that talks about the generation of Sodom. And there's an identical Yerushalmi Gemara that talks about the generation of the flood. And they say, what did they do wrong? They gave an example. Someone came into town with a cart of onions, big cart of onions to sell. And each onion is worth less than a penny, nothing. So if a person steals less than a pruta, as I'm sure you know, so then they're not obligated for stealing. It's not a good thing. You did something wrong, but they can't try you in court for theft if you stole less than a pruta. So what would happen? Each guy took an onion. I said, oh, what did I do? I took one onion. As long as no one else takes, it's negligible. But by the time the guy left the town, he was left with nothing. And that was Sodom. That's why they got destroyed. Or Dor Mabul. That's why they got destroyed. Just shows that the fact that you could say that what I did is nothing, but the cumulative effect would be something very destructive. You cannot hide behind that argument. Okay, and there's other proofs to it as well, and therefore everyone has to do their due diligence and not worry about it what anyone else is doing. Okay, last question. One more question.
Rabbi Ezekiel is asking for us to wrap it up.
Okay.
Should we close with Daniel?
Yeah. Dan, wake up, Dan. Wake up.
All right. There's no side effect from an onion.
Please, everybody.
Fantastic
Sorry,
class.
this question is very late. Go ahead, Daniel.
Thank you very much. Fantastic class. Just one more point in regards to people's concerns about that the vaccine is not a guarantee. It's not 100%. So the data shows that people that get COVID, about 10% may not get antibodies after having COVID. I've seen several people that did not get antibodies after having COVID. So the vaccine is more effective in giving immunity than the virus itself, which is something unbelievable. This is really a very, very effective vaccine, and people should realize that.
Yeah, and that's also one of the advantages of an mRNA vaccine is that it can elicit a much stronger antibody response than just giving vaccine virus particles or something else like that. And that's one of the things that's why people are using it now more than ever. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much.
One second, everybody.
Yeah.
If you have any more questions, please submit them to @BethTorah on Instagram, and we'll try to forward them to Dr. Matalon.
Beth-Torah?
@BethTorah. Just look it up, BethTorah on Instagram, and we'll try to answer the questions. Or send an email to
Fantastic class, Al.
Thank you. It was great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr.
Albert.
Thank you, doctor.
Hazaka Baruch, doctor. Thank you very much.
Hazaka Baruch.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Albert.
Thanks,
Albert.
Dan.
And the moderator, Maurice Tersey.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Albert.
Thank Jack.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Albert.
Jack, where you gonna post the recording, Jack?
Thank you, Albert.
It's probably going to go on. It's going to be sent out on the WhatsApp, and we'll probably send it out on the email too. I think SCA is probably going to post it as well.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Have
you.
a great night, everyone. I'm closing the meeting.
Thank you.